devastated, brought to the brink of total destruction. And that's exactly what made them unstoppable. We're taught to avoid failure, to minimize risk, to play it safe. But here's what the data actually showed. Organizations that achieve multi-generational dominance don't avoid failure. They weaponize it. They turn every disaster into doctrine. This isn't a motivational speech. I want you to recognize the pattern. When you study organizations that don't survive but dominate for decades, you find the same formula. They experience catastrophic failure. They interrogate that failure without mercy. They extract transferable doctrine, and then they dominate. In the next 10 minutes, I'll show you how this works. We dissect two cases where total disaster created unbeatable doctrine. Then I'll give you the framework to apply this in your own organization. Right now, you're sitting on failures that could be your greatest strategic asset if you know how to extract them. August 1945. Japan has just surrendered. 2 atomic bombs, 66 cities destroyed. Their industrial base is rubble. They're under military occupation. The rest of the world won't trade with them. They can't import raw materials. They can't access capital. By every metric, Japan should have taken a generation just to reach subsistence. Instead, they became the world's second largest economy in 25 years. How? Japanese manufacturers had no choice. They couldn't afford to waste a single piece of metal, so they developed Jidoka, automation with a human touch. Every worker could stop the entire line if they spotted a defect. They couldn't warehouse inventory, no space, no capital. So they invented just-in-time manufacturing. The constraint wasn't their enemy. The constraint was their teacher. This became the Toyota production system, the doctrine that conquered global manufacturing. GM tried to copy it for decades and failed because they copied the tools without understanding the origin. TPS wasn't created by consultants in a conference room. It was forged in the fire of national humiliation. Every principle was a response to a specific constraint, and those constraints made it anti-fragile. The harder you pressed it, the stronger it became. 1997, Apple has 90 days of cash left. They're making 350 different products and nobody wants any of them. Steve Jobs had been exiled for 12 years. Michael Dell, then the king of personal computing, publicly says Apple should shut down and return the money to shareholders. Apple is a punchline. Steve Jobs comes back and does something radical. He looks backward and he asks, "What killed us?" The answer is brutal. Apple had been making products for 15 different customer segments with 350 SKUs and no coherent philosophy. They were competing with themselves, so Jobs draws a 2x2 matrix on a whiteboard. Consumer, pro, desktop, portable. 4 products. That's it. This was doctrine extraction, not corporate restructuring. Every principle came from interrogating their failures. Focus, because 350 products killed them. Integration, because licensing Mac OS to clones cannibalized sales. Premium positioning, because racing to the bottom destroyed margins. This doctrine wasn't theory, it was scar tissue, and it turned a company 90 days from death into the world's first trillion-dollar company. The mechanism? Stage 1. You need a disaster big enough that you can't ignore it. Not a quarterly miss, an existential threat. Stage 2. Interrogate it without mercy. No ego protection, no blame deflection. What specifically killed us? Stage 3. Extract the doctrine, the transferable principles that work across contexts. And Stage 4. Embed it so deep it becomes identity. Most organizations fail at this because they skip the interrogation phase. They want to move forward without looking backward. Or they blame individuals instead of interrogating systems. They extract tactics instead of principles. And they try to communicate doctrine with a PowerPoint instead of embedding it in systems. Doctrine isn't a speech. It's a reflex. There's a dark pattern. The depth of your humiliation predicts the strength of your doctrine. Shallow failures produce tactical adjustments. Near-death experiences produce organizational doctrine. National humiliation produces generational transformation. That's why Toyota's doctrine lasted 70 years. It was born from a civilizational crisis. But there's also a trap. You have to actually interrogate. Nokia saw the iPhone and didn't ask, what killed us? BlackBerry went bankrupt rather than interrogate why people wanted touchscreens. The humiliation is valueless unless you extract the lesson. So how do you do it? Step 1, identify your disasters. What failure have you been avoiding? What's still painful to talk about? That's your starting point. Step 2, interrogate it without ego. Not who screwed up, but what system failed. Step 3, extract the doctrine. What transferable principle comes from this step? Step 4, embed it in the systems. Doctrine living in a memo dies. Doctrine living in a checklist survives. You do have an unfair advantage. You've already paid for your failures. The cost is sunk. Most organizations hide that failure, which means they'll pay for it again and again. But if you interrogate, if you extract the doctrine, that failure becomes your competitive advantage because your competitors are still afraid of what you've already learned. Disaster doesn't create weakness. Disaster creates doctrine, but only if you're willing to look at it in the eye and ask, what is this trying to teach me? Next week, we're going to talk about Chapter 3, Speed as an Organizational Doctrine, how to move fast without breaking everything. If this changed how you see failure, subscribe. We're building the operating system for organizational dominance, one chapter at a time, right here. Follow